Good evening, Sector 001. I'm TJ Esnak, your host for the Jupiter Station podcast. Tonight's guest is somebody Trek fans from the 90s would know really, really well. But it wasn't just Star Trek he was in. He was also in The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, Die Hard 2. He was also in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and Bill and Ted Face the Music. Tonight's guest is none other than Mr. William Sadler. Bill, welcome to the show.
Yay! How how are
I
you? Did I
I
do all
am.
that stuff?
Oh, you
Oh
you
my
did. And
God.
honestly, I was today years old when I figured out you were Death in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
You didn't know that already?
I did not. It didn't click. I've seen it, but it didn't click. So
Well, 3 hours of makeup and a white face and a Czechoslovakian accent. I don't know why. I don't know why you didn't think it was me.
you've got quite the resume, I gotta say.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Um, but for my viewers who might not be as familiar with you, could you give us a brief background of you?
Um, Born in Buffalo, raised on a farm when I was very young. Uh, we didn't have animals. We had animals, but it wasn't like cows and chickens. It was pigeons and rabbits and dogs and cats and things like that. But it was a great childhood. It was a great running around that barn with a BB gun and diving out of the hayloft and coming up shooting and
It was
and
an adventure in
acting
childhood.
acting out every action movie, every James Bond film, The Man from Uncle, I mean, Gunsmoke, Have Gun Will Travel. If it had a gun in it, it was I had the gun, and and Combat with Vic Morrow. Me and my friend John Messer used to uh, we would just and it's not to say we didn't have television. We had television. That's how we got all these, you know, inspiring bits of television. Uh, but then the fun part was to go out in the barn and pretend to be those people and run around the barn and get captured by the Germans and then eat a peanut butter and banana sandwich and escape and then get wounded and then have to rescue somebody and then there was like this endless world of make believe that happened in and around this magic barn. um, this cow stanchions, there were no cows in it anymore. I used to sit my sister in it and put this pie pan on her head with wires attached to it, and it was the brain switch machine. I invented a brain switching machine, and we'd pull a pull a wooden lever, and it would switch her brain for somebody else. And
I'm sure your parents were very thankful you guys had such a large imagination.
we had a yeah, well, it got us out of the house. My mom just didn't want us underfoot anymore. It was like there were four kids was that's a lot. But anyway, that was I had an interesting childhood full of a lot of imaginary stuff. In fact, the very first time I fired blanks in Die Hard 2, the first take, we're all standing around the nose cone of the airplane and we unload like 1,000 rounds of full blank loads, full loads. And it's deafening. It's absolutely deafening. And it's raining hot brass because the next whoever is standing to this side of you, his brass is hitting you in the head. Your brass is hitting the next guy in the head. And Tim Cooney, the sound mixer on the show, came up to me after the first take. Excuse me. And he said to me, Bill, you don't have to make that sound with your mouth anymore. Because apparently I was going, right? And I didn't have to. So, yeah. And then then I started doing plays. I did 4 years of plays at Geneseo, SUNY Geneseo. Then I got a scholarship to study at Cornell for 2 years and get more training. And then I went to New York and started doing theater. It was all theater. The first 11 years of my career was all theater. Shakespeare and Moliere and Chekhov, and it ended with a year and a half on Broadway in Biloxi Blues, Neil Simon's Biloxi Blues, which I look back on now. I mean, 8 shows a week, and it's an amazing training ground. There's nobody can yell cut. Nobody can save your ass. There's no music. You and the audience. You either cook it up at 7:30 when the curtain goes for this 1,100 people, or they're not going to see the play that they read about, and it was but that was the training ground. It's what I loved and it's what I wanted to do and be, and I never felt more at home. And then I discovered movies. My wife said, people actually make money doing this.
What? Are you crazy? They do that?
They do that in the movies, but only in the movies and the movies and television. And which was that was an interesting concept. So I got my first job in the movies. I think my first real job, I guess, was the star of Biloxi Blues was Matthew Broderick. Matthew Broderick went to do, I think he did War Games first, but then or Ferris Bueller, Stay Off, but then he did Project X, and when he did Project X, they needed a bad guy, and they brought me in to be the bad guy, and that was my first experience. Big studio, Fox studio, and suddenly we're out in Los Angeles, and fish out of water, just fish out of water. My wife, Marnie, was a born and raised New Yorker, Upper West Side. She used to say LA was her description of Los Angeles was they have 3 good bookstores and 10,000 places to get your nails done. Which is it's a pretty snobby way of looking at the city of Los Angeles. It's clearly more than that, but I dragged a New Yorker out to LA to start a family and make movies. And then I did movies, and then, movies and TV shows. And the rest is history.
It is definitely history. I have to say, as far as the characters you've played, would you say the vast majority of them, including Star Trek and Die Hard and Project X, have primarily been, if not like a full-on bad guy, then kind of like a questionable good guy?
Oh, you mean the guy in Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, like obviously Luther Sloan was he thought he was a good guy, but everybody else saw him as a bad guy. And then you've had the other roles. I mean, obviously Death could be a good guy, could be a bad guy. It really depends on like what side of the sickle you're looking at.
If he's,
And then
I
you've got
guess,
the character in Project X that you played, that you're
right,
supposed to be the opposite to Matthew Broderick's character.
right. Well, those guys were. He's pretty bad. I mean, that was he had there was a research project based on I think on a real research project, I think, where the Air Force they were gonna train chimps to fly flight simulators, and then radiate them and measure how long they could fly well before they died. And that
That
was
sounds about right.
and that sounds like to see, and that was to see if there was a first strike, could American pilots get in their planes who had been radiated, get in their planes and make it all the way to Russia or wherever? Or would they die halfway across the ocean and this was a waste of time? That was the premise of the film, I guess. and Hollywood took it further. But yeah, no, I was a bad guy in that. And I was a bad guy in the Dennis Hopper movie, The Hot Spot. I was a really bad guy in Steven Seagal's movie, Hard to Kill.
Oh yes, absolutely. I saw that one. That was
And then I was
very
and then I was super bad in Die Hard 2. I killed 300-400 people just like that, just to teach them a lesson. I mean, who does that?
bad guy.
A bad guy. And then I got a chance to be Death. And Death, the fun thing about Death was that he was funny. And I got a chance to be funny, which I've always loved and I've always enjoyed, an opportunity to make people laugh and play a funny character. But what was great about him was when you first see him, he's scary as shit. He's another bad guy. It's he's as scary as they come. He's scarier than anybody. He's the Grim Reaper. And then it isn't until he starts to lose the games, he loses Battleship, and then he loses Clue, and then he loses Electric Football, and then he loses, Twister, and best 3 out of 5. And I said Plum, and he's lying, he's kvetching, he's petulant, and he just like dissolves before your very eyes from this terrifying creature into this, just petulant, spoiled little shit, who okay, I'll take you back, and then they put him in a dress, then they build the good robots and the bad, and finally he joins the band, and then he's like, now and he discovers show business, and of course show business, it's like, it's all of a sudden he's like a goner, he's like he's found he's he's found what he really loves to do is play the bass in the Wild Stallions. So so there's a really nice arc for the character, you know. He starts out being a, you know, grumpy guy and it's scary, and ends up being this sort of lovable doofus that you're not afraid of at all.
Yeah, but by the end of the movie, I'm like, oh man, you guys could at least let him win like one game. Come on, Bill, Ted,
Just
let him win.
one. But
And I think those are some of the best characters for people to watch. Like you start out with a preconceived notion, and then by the time you're done watching whatever you're watching, that character's completely changed. You're like, oh, maybe you can win just one. Like you feel bad for him at the end.
right. No, yeah. They're not, they're great character. He's a great character. He's a great creation. The writing did, you know, 90% of that, and I added 10% of my own silliness, and they let me add my own silliness whenever I had an idea. I would say, you know, they're in a hardware store and he's got a scythe in one hand. He picks up a weed whacker and goes, nah, and it's like maybe that's a better thing, you know.
Like I could do so much more work with this.
But it was like, but things like that, the Reaper rap. I ended up writing the Reaper rap, that thing. You might be a king or a little street sweeper, but sooner or later you dance with the Reaper. That was, they had written a thing that I was supposed to say, but it wasn't a rap, and it wasn't funny, and I couldn't make it make sense. And I asked them, I said, do you mind if I if I have a go at it? And they said, sure. Ed Solomon and Chris Mathewson. And they were very kind, and they said, sure. And I did it, and they said, well, that's hysterical. It's in, you know, and it's in the movie, and it's like, there's a moment in the hardware store. I had the most fun playing this guy. There's a moment in the hardware store where the Grim Reaper, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if he passes a clerk or somebody, a customer, a clerk, somebody who's smoking, and as he walks by him, he says, see you real soon. And the guy goes, and he puts the cigarette out, right? And I thought, that'd be funny, and it's a good message. And I told the director, Pete Hewitt, and there wasn't anybody. There was no actor to play it. We hadn't cast somebody to be the smoker. So Pete Hewitt said, bring the camera over here. And Pete Hewitt played the smoker. The director plays the smoker. And I walk by him and say, see you real soon. And he goes, and he puts the cigarette out, and it's in the movie. And it was like, but it was like that. It was sort of, you know, seat of your pants. Yeah. It was, if it was funny and it was a good idea, you know,
And
shoot
to
it.
be honest,
You can always cut it.
Ad lib is like 90% of humor. Like if you can take a funny concept and just like kind of like roll with it, and
yeah, right, exactly. But most, you know, 95% or some 99% of it was all written. I mean, the funny stuff that he did in the games and how he lost, and we shot the game sequence on the first day of the very first day on the set, which was terrifying. But anyway, yeah. So So there was that. But it was a nice. I played bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, and then I played a guy who was. You think he's going to be a bad guy, and he turns out not to be such a bad guy. And the same thing, kind of the same thing, happened in the Shawshank Redemption. He starts out. He makes a bet that gets fat ass killed, and I ad-libbed when I hear Hadley coming down the, and Hadley is saying, you better knock it off, or I'm gonna bust some heads, and I know what's gonna happen, and I started saying, shut up, just shut up, to fat ass, and it was too late, too little, too late, and what I was afraid was going to happen happened, but that was a tiny little piece of human that it's not in the script, and Frank allowed it. Frank allowed it because it was a color, it was one more color in the character, and I think it made him more. I think it made him a slightly more interesting human. It's like
and honestly, I think actors, you guys have the script that you're given, and the writers say, okay, well, this is kind of how you play it, but it's really up to the actors to add the
what?
subtle colors, like
Right. Well, that they say their movies get made 3 times. Once when they're written, once when the actors act them, and we film it, and the last time is when the editor sits down with all that footage and puts it together in such a way that it tells a story. And editing is I don't think people realize how much we owe editors for great movies, or they can save movies, they can make okay actors look great. You can, if you have an actor who's got this like blank look on their face, an editor editors can save performances. They can, they're just magicians. But yeah, you do what you do, and it's different, and it's very different from the theater, where there are no editors. There's no. That's it. You're gonna whatever the actors do up there, that's gonna be the thing from beginning to end.
And that's a lot more color specific too.
And that's it. But it's an actor's, it's an actor's medium. That's, you get the audience, you grab them, you hold them, you tell them a story, you hold their attention for an hour and a half or whatever. You make. It took me a long time. It took me two or three movies to figure out. I had spent so many years doing theater that it took me a while to figure out what was happening, what movies were, what acting in front of a camera really was about. Um, and once I did, it's extraordinarily freeing. It was, it was, uh, it's easier in a million ways. It's just, there's this huge safety net, there's a crowd of people around you who will touch up your makeup or make sure your costume is cool, or throw you, throw you the lines if you need somebody. If you're on the movie set and you can't, and you go up, you just say cue or line, and the script supervisor will throw you the line, and you go back a few sentences, you start again, or with digital, it's even, you can, it doesn't even cost, you can do 50 takes and just delete them all, keep the one you like, you're not you couldn't do that with film's expensive, developing it was expensive, everything about it was expensive, the machines were expensive, operators were expensive, and I think all of that is just different now.
Like the difference between when you filmed Project X, that was during the 80s, height of the Cold War, so it was a lot of very relevant things. And now you can kind of look back at that and say, wow, that was a really weird time. And the same can be said about film versus digital. It's like, wow, how did we ever do this before we had digital? Because
I know.
like you said, film is expensive, the development is expensive. You have personnel that are involved in that. You have to go back. You have to cut. A lot more things were left on, the cutting room floor as it is. And with
Right.
digital, it seems like it's really shortened that distance.
They also have monitors. The director can sit and watch a TV screen, and watch the performance exactly the way the camera is seeing the performance, with whatever little nuances you bring or don't bring, or they can watch it again. They can watch it again and again, and say, show me take number 2. And they'll watch take number 2 and say, okay, all right, mark 2 and 7, and but you couldn't do that, or in the 80s, there was no. Walter Hill used to say he would. I did the first Tales from the Crypt with him, and he said he used to stand next to the camera lens. He would just stand there. Here's the lens and here's his head, and he would watch the scene and then turn to the camera operator, and say, what do you think? Did you get it? Was it in focus? And he said, and you'd get it wrong sometimes. You'd watch the performance and get blown away and think, oh, that's it. That's the one. And then you look at the film later, and on film, it's not the one. It's not.
Everybody's like, oh,
it's too big, or it's too, or whatever. But now you can. Everybody watches the monitor. Everybody's, and in fact, actors. I don't think it's a good thing, but actors will do a scene and then run over to the monitor and watch themselves do the scene, watch their take, and say, I need another one. I need to go again. Um, and
Almost like creating a perfectionist, almost.
I think it makes you self-conscious. I think sometimes what you what you're looking for. I think what you're looking for from actors is something that they're not in real life. You're not aware of what your face is doing. You're not aware of of most of the expressions that are playing around on your face, and what's going, you're going through your day, you're going through this argument, you're going through this thing. And I think maybe not always, but if if you run over and look and watch your own performance, well, first of all, now you've eliminated the director, because now you're directing yourself. You say, because ordinarily that would be the director's job. Say, I need another one. You should, let's try that again, and this time, just lighten it up or throw it away, or whatever the director wants to, however they want to modify something. Now the actor is directing themselves. Now they're judging their own performance in real time, and you can't. You can do one or you can do the other. You can either be there with your belly hanging out and sweat on your forehead and snot coming out of your nose, and you can either be there balls to the wall, or you can some part of you is judging, I'm going to show them this, and I'm going to show them, then I'm going to show them that. And I don't know that, I'm not sure that's as good. That was a very polite way. That was a very polite way of saying it, wasn't it?
It makes perfect sense, Bill. Like the presence is somehow not all there. Like there's some part of them, like they're not fully present in the role.
Right. Because if they were, they wouldn't care what their fucking hair looked like. They wouldn't, the only thing that matters is that this action gets played, that they get what they're asking for in the scene, or
And I think that makes a very big difference, because when somebody's fully present, I'll use Sloan as an example. That was very much present. In that moment, you are a spy for Starfleet, and you're dark, and you're in it, and you're trying to manipulate your asset, basically.
right.
And if you're like, for lack of a better term, if you're half-assing it, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna need you to like go to this Romulan thing, and hold on.
Well, then
yeah.
you're kind of pretend. Then you're pretending. Well, then there's a lot more pretending going on, and indicating going on. I love playing Sloan. To get back to the Star Trek world, playing Sloan was great fun, because he's very pure. He's very single-minded in what he wants and what he reminds me of Vladimir Putin. You know, he's like he's playing 2 or 3 different chess games in his head, and thinks, and maybe rightly so, thinks he's smarter than just about anyone in the room. And but there's something he's sinister, he's polite, he's that scary kind of polite that you realize there's like, holy crap, there's more going on here than meets the eye. He's got the best entrance in the history of Star Trek, sitting there watching Dr. Bashir sleep.
Every time, too.
He's just watching him sleep. Doesn't wake him up. Doesn't, you know, he just it's the creepiest. It's just plain creepy. And
good morning, I'm going to use you now.
Yeah. But he's he's very single-minded. Knows what he wants, knows what he needs to do. And it's wrong. I mean, it was sort of, I'm sure it was based on Oliver North, who was anyone who's old enough to remember the Iran-Contra scandal. Oliver North was convicted, I think went to prison, or I think.
Something like that, I remember, yeah.
Something like that, but of selling arms, trading arms for hostages. And after Reagan was saying, no, we never do that. No, we don't. America doesn't do that. Well, America did do that. And Oliver North is the one who, because someone had to do it. And he did it. He took the fall for it and kept his mouth shut and went to jail. And, you know, there's that kind of, you know, I think I don't know whether Sloan actually has the line, but it's something like, you didn't think you won that war by yourself, do you? You know, like giving a whole planet some plague.
I kind of saw the same thing. I saw like the Oliver North end of it, but I think I also saw like a little bit of like Jack Nicholson's character from A Few Good Men. Like the thing is, you need people like me, people who are on that wall guarding your freedom. And he's so committed to saying, I'm doing something that's so important that you don't know about it. Like, you know, I'm killing people and I'm lying to people, but I'm doing it to protect you.
Right. Without me, there is no you.
Wow.
Well, that's
goosebumps right there, man. Wow.
Well, that's what Sloan is saying. That's like, without, you know, you don't think you won that war by yourself. You know, you don't, and it's a horrible realization, I think, for the Star Trek community to realize that in the Federation, in the Constitution of the Federation, somewhere in there is Section 31, that they are authorized to do these sorts of things. They're authorized to do these black ops and do the worst possible things imaginable in order for the Federation to keep their hands clean and win the war, or solve the conflict, or come away.
I have to say, Bill, the way
What?
you set that character up has, in my opinion, literally set up the way the Star Trek world sees Section 31. There have been a few books that came out obviously after Deep Space Nine, and they reference Section 31. And I don't think anybody can think of Section 31 without seeing you sitting in that chair as Sloan, twiddling your fingers, saying, "Okay, how are we going to get this mission accomplished?" I can't wait. There was a Dayton Ward wrote a book, and they go into like how Section 31 was opened up and blown apart, and you see how many people were actually on the Section 31 payroll. And I guarantee there's not a Star Trek fan who doesn't read that without saying, "Huh, I wonder how Sloan fits into this."
Who wrote
So
the book?
you're an icon. The name of the book is Hearts and Minds, and it is honestly it's one of the better Star Trek novels I've read. I spoke with the author, actually. He's a Facebook friend of mine, and I said, "So did you write that before or after Picard?" He said, "Well, I wrote it in 2017, so it was like right before Picard." I said, "Ooh, so there's a whole lot of retconning that needs to be happening now, because just of how they referred to the character of Picard and the interpersonal relationships." And you watch Picard years later, and I realized you told me this afternoon you haven't seen a whole lot of Star Trek,
Right.
but you watch the newer shows that actually deals with Picard and a lot of the characters from TNG, and it's completely different than this book you've read. So I think a lot of salt has to be taken with these books, especially when you watch the TV shows as opposed to the books.
Do you mean that have they attempted to clean up the Federation again, or I mean because because this dirty little secret comes out in Deep Space Nine, and nobody knows how long it's been there. Has it apparently has been going on for forever,
like since before the beginning, really.
Yeah, since the very beginning of the Federation. No,
Yeah, actually, I think what was it? The series that came after Voyager, Star Trek Enterprise, touched on that, and they touched on Section 31 a little bit, but it wasn't anything like you did it. Like, honestly, I think when people think of Section 31, they think of Sloan, and that's just what people think of as Section 31.
who would actually commit suicide rather than let them get his secrets, which is
Joke was on him. In fact, it's funny you mentioned that. I was watching that actually today, and I'm like, huh, we never see Sloan after this. I think he really killed himself this time.
I think he did. I think he. I think he did. I think he was. I think there's a level of commitment that's what, and that's really. I mean, it's almost like it's almost like samurai. It's like the death.
Take your honor to the grave with you.
There's no, death is not something you need to be afraid of. Death is, and that's a scary warrior. Someone who's not afraid of their own death is,
because they have nothing to lose.
Well, because you do. You're scared. Everybody over there is afraid, but this person has this like inner calmness that is 100 feet deep. It's just I don't know. It's an interesting it's an interesting acting problem to have. And I really did I loved that they called me and asked me to play this guy. I really did. And I read the first page and I said, he's sitting watching him sleep. Of course I'll do this.
Like, that's delightfully creepy. Yes.
Are you kidding? Of course. It was just like so unexpected and so strange, and like, where the hell do we go from here? And and they were great. They were great on the set. The very first day I asked him, I said, does he have a first name? Because he was, I think in the script, he was just Director Sloan. And I asked, and they sent up, someone called the writer's room or something, and a voice came back down from the heavens and said, Luther. His first name is Luther. And I thought, okay, yeah, of course it is. And they were very, very, more so than any other show. I already talked about, like, sometimes ad-libbing a little bit, or adding something, or would it be okay if I did this or that or that? There's none of that. There's none of that. You don't change. You can't change a word. Not a single word of the writing. It comes out the way that it appears on the page, because first of all, the writing is really good, and you're not likely to improve it much by your making it colloquial or something. And secondly, all of these people they're from another time. They can't sound like they're from Queens, or they can't sound like New Yorkers or some. You ain't gonna hear nobody up there talking like this, because they ain't from around there, or from the South, or from Texas, or people speak the way they speak because we're in a different, we're centuries later, we're in a different place and a different time. Plus, you wear a dance belt that covers up all of your junk, and which I don't know that every Star Trek fan knows that, but it's true. It's the first thing they fit on you.
Like, so what are you fitting me for? A uniform? No, we're fitting you for a junk belt.
No, it's the junk coverer. It's because we have a lot of these sort of skin tight, very sleek looking outfits, and so everybody is gonna look like a Ken, just a Ken doll right there.
I find my uniform very slimming. Like, when I do Comic Cons and stuff,
Yeah,
I'm not a tiny person, and I ordered my uniforms off of eBay. I said, "Oh, I'm a size 3X, no sweat." And, put it in eBay, send it, and you get it, and it's like this big. You're like, "Oh."
yep. Oh.
And I did that one Halloween. I was hell bent to wear the season 2 Star Trek Picard uniform.
Yeah.
And I got the uniform. I said, "Okay, 3X." Okay, it's a little snug. And my wife's like, "So are you sending it back?" It's like, no.
Are you kidding?
It's like, I paid $40 for this uniform. You bet your ass I'm going to be wearing it to Halloween. And I put it on, and it's like that super stretchy. It's not quite spandex, but it's like sort of spandex. And I put it on. I said, "Okay, hey, I don't look so bad now. I'm not as fat as I could be." Okay.
I can't breathe, but aside from that, yeah, no, I had a sort of a fake leather outfit that was skin tight, that was pretty damn snug, and they didn't. They, but I didn't. But I was in pretty good shape at the time, so it fit. It looked all right on me. I didn't have a big gut yet, and that came later. And then Ozempic took it off. No,
It's
but
easy to put it on, but takes it off forever. So,
but yeah, no, I was very I have to say it was not only was it fun to do, and it was great fun to play that character, because he was, you know, he marched to his own drummer. That's he didn't have to pay you know, pay any attention to anyone else except the person he was talking to, and he plays this kind of three-dimensional chess all the time. And I like to sometimes feel like I have a dial where I can turn up somebody's IQ or turn it way, way down, you know. And Sloan, you turn it up to 11, you know. You figure he knows what the guy behind him is thinking. He knows what this person over here is about to do, or he thinks he does anyway. And at the other end of the dial are people like, you know, Haywood and Shawshank, or, you know, or the Grim Reaper, who are they're surprised by everything they see. It comes as a surprise because they weren't expecting it, and that can be very funny to what, you know. That's where that Alexander dumbass, and he's like, whoa, look, you know, he's surprised by almost everything. Almost everything in the world surprises him, and that's can be charming and it can be funny. But people like Colonel Stewart or director Sloan, it's a different. There's just a different amount of gray matter at work. And I also wanted to be. I always thought it was going to be cool to be. I watched the William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy Star Trek, you know, the original,
mm-hmm.
all the funny creatures and fake rocks and gerbils and things, and, you know, and it was still wonderful. I mean, it was, for all of the dumb creatures and things, it was still wonderful, and it became a part of the fabric of our culture. And so when they asked me to add a little thread to this big tapestry that is Star Trek, I was honored. I took me about 8 seconds to say yes.
Well, I need to start wrapping up because I'm getting a call from the chow hall from the Admiral. Because she's cooking tonight apparently. But are there any charities that are kind of near and dear to your heart that you want to let some of the folks at home know about?
During the pandemic, I've been writing and recording songs for a long, long time. And I finally put together an album called William Sadler, The Kitchen Tapes, as opposed to the basement tapes or the attic tapes. These are the kitchen tapes. And they're available on Bandcamp. You can go to Bandcamp, and there's vinyl and there's CDs, but the money goes to St. Jude's Children's Cancer Hospital, which I think is a great, that's about as good as it gets, taking care of kids that are struggling with these awful diseases. And so if any of your folks would like to check out the music, you can go to, what is it? William Sadler. It's not williamsadler.com. Oh, my web mistress is going to kill me. But it's like that. It's like, call me Bill Sadler. Maybe that's what it's called. Call me Bill Sadler. Or you can just go to Bandcamp and look at William Sadler, the kitchen tapes, and I'll send you an autographed CD or an autographed piece of vinyl, a beautiful big vinyl.
Vinyl's coming back.
Vinyl's great, man. And but the money goes to St. Jude's. The money does not go. It goes in a bank account, and at the end of the year, St. Jude's gets a check, and that's what happens to it. So there you go.
That is amazing and awesome, Bill. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule tonight. I got to do my post-production stuff, so this will probably be hitting YouTube and the audio circuits probably Sunday at midnight or so. I've got your email. I've got your phone number. I can let you know when it hits. So
yeah, please do. Shoot me an email or something so I can let I'll tell my people to call your people, and I'll let my people know that
2 years ago that would have sounded so weird to hear. But I've been doing this podcast since last January, and it keeps getting better. Like when I first started out, I was reading notes from a clipboard like it was a job interview. And my brother took me aside one day. I went over to my parents' house. He said, "Dude, I was watching your show the other night." He said, "I know you're having fun. Let your guests know you're having fun." He said, "You are so mechanical." And I was looking at it the wrong way. I'm like, God, these people are. Oh, I watch these people on TV. Like I gotta be meticulous. And I started having conversations, and it got easier. Obviously, I called your agent Rachel, and she said, "Yeah, shoot me an email," and I just typed up an email, and we made that happen. And it's just getting a whole lot easier to make all these arrangements. So I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight, and I will keep you posted when it hits YouTube and stuff.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You have a great night, Bill, okay?
Peace out.
Peace. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Did you know Jupiter Station, a Star Trek podcast, also has a Patreon page with 3 membership tiers to fit any budget? Go to patreon.com and look for us, then click join. It's that easy. Did you know? Jupiter Station, a Star Trek podcast, has a show store? Just go to jupiterstationgiftshop.creator-spring.com/ to see more.